Hi, welcome to the workshop. In today's video I'm going to be cutting my first ever dovetail joint. I've never cut a dovetail before, so this is completely new to me. I'm going to be cutting them by hand. So I've watched a few videos on YouTube, in particular Rob Cosman does a brilliant video on cutting dovetails, and Jay Bates also had a really good video. So combination of those two, I've taken some tips from them. I've been and done some shopping, and this is what I've got. So I've bought myself one of these thin sort of Japanese style saws. I've also got this little dovetail guide, which hopefully is going to help me do them. This is a magnetic guide. It's pre-cut at a 1:8 angle to give me the angle for the dovetails, and it's got a little clamping mechanism. So the idea being, put this on the end of your board, line it up with your marks, clamp it to your board, and then you come in here and the saw actually sticks to the guide by magnetism, and then hopefully that's going to give me a nice clean cut. The other thing that I've got here is I've just bought myself a nice new marking gauge. So this is going to obviously give me a nice clean cut across the end of the board when we come to mark out the dovetails. I've got two pieces of Western red cedar here. I've just cut this board in half. They're exactly the same thickness, and these are the two pieces that I'm going to dovetail together. Right, I think we've got everything we need, so let's get to it. Here's what we're going to need to cut these dovetails. I've got the tools laid out on the bench here. We've got the Veritas dovetail clamp that we've purchased, and the Veritas Japanese saw. Got a couple of chisels, different sizes for chiseling out the waste material between the tails and the pins. My marking gauge, pencil and a little square, mallet for the chisels, and a little fret saw as well. I'm going to cut the bulk of the waste material away with the fret saw, or coping saw rather, and then clean them up with the chisels. Right, let's get the first bit of wood in the vise, start marking it out. I've got my two bits of wood. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a T on here for tails and a P on here for pins, and we're going to cut the tails first. So let's get our marking gauge. We need to establish the thickness of these pieces of wood, so what we'll do, drop the marking gauge onto the wood, and when it touches the other side, nip that up, and I know that's exactly the right thickness. And then on the tails we'll need to scribe a line all the way around, because we're going to remove these end pieces as well. And on the pins board we only want to mark the two faces. Like so. Okay, that will give us the depth at which we need to cut to. Put the tails board in the vise to start with, and I'm just going to roughly mark these out by eye. So I'm going to come in about 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to go up 1/8 of an inch either side of centre, come in 1/4 of an inch from this end. This is only a trial, so you know, if you was doing this for a proper piece of cabinetry, you know, you'd spend a bit of time and lay these out properly, but I'm just going to show that you don't actually need to lay them out properly in order to get a decent joint, hopefully. Okay, got the end of the tails marked, so now we need to use this Veritas magnetic guide. Now what I want to do is I want to cut that V shape, that distinct dovetail V shape, into this tails board. So I need to put this clamp on this way round, just nip that up, place that on the piece of wood, and then put the side of the guide to my first pencil mark. Nip that up, and then come in here with the saw, sticks to the guide, and then I'm just going to cut down to my gauge line. Move across to the next pencil mark, cut down to the gauge line. Come in on the other side of the dovetail, so we're just cutting on the other side of the guide. And went a little bit too far on that one. But never mind, this is only my first attempt at this. Okay, so that's our tails cut down to the line. One or two of those have gone a little bit too far, so never mind, it's my first attempt. So I'll stick the pins board in the vise, and I'm going to use the tails board to mark out the pins. Now, a little trick that Rob says to do is to offset the board by the thickness of your saw and then come in here and just put a saw cut and come in this side of the dovetail, put a saw cut here, offset the piece by the thickness of the blade on the other side, again come in here on this side of the tail now and mark these ones. There we go. So hopefully what that's done is that's given us some indications of where we're going to start cutting these pins. Change the clamp set up on the guide, so it's now on the vertical straight down cut, because these pins just want to be vertical cuts. Line it up with the mark and then cut down to the line. Same again on the opposite side of these pins. These are just vertical cuts. There we go. Right, so that's the pins cut. Obviously on the pins we want to remove this material here, and then on the tails we want to remove this material here. So to start with, we can simply place this back in the vise, remove these end pieces, being careful not to cut into our tail. And with this middle piece, I'm just going to cut the bulk of this out with a little coping saw. Now I'm going to come in here and clean it up with a chisel. That's the bulk of the material. All I've got to do then is just a couple of little chisel cuts to bring it back down to my line. Same with the pins board. Remove the bulk of the material with the coping saw. Making sure that you don't cut through the pin. Okay, move to the bench now, and then we'll just clean these up with the chisel. So I'm just going to creep up on this line with the chisel, just taking little pieces at a time. Go about halfway and then come in from the other side. Sure that all of that waste material is out of there and it's down to my line, and then do the same with the pin board. You use a slightly bigger chisel on this side. Come back in on the other side. So just tap this home. There we go, the first ever dovetail. Okay, there's one or two little gaps and I think I overcut a little bit. My chisels aren't the greatest, to be fair, but for a very first attempt I'm quite happy with that. I'll put some links in the description below for where I purchased these items off eBay. This is not a sponsored video, but if you guys would like to try this magnetic guide out yourself and the little Veritas Japanese saw, I'll put a few links in the description and then you can have a go yourself. So, as I say, first time I've ever done a dovetail joint by hand. Quite happy with how that's turned out. I hope you found this interesting and it's been of use to you. I'm going to try a different method next time. I've bought a dovetail jig that you can use your router with, so I'm going to try that method and see if that's any better. But for a first attempt at hand cut, I'm rather pleased with that. Let me know what you think. Please give me a comment and give me a thumbs up, and if you haven't done already, please do subscribe. See you in the next video. Cheers.